I'm Whitney.
And I'm Taylor. And we're the Ghost Sisters. Boop, 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 boop.
Yo.
So, we're going to start with just a little business. Whitney and I are both in the process of starting school. So Whitney is going back to school, and I'm of course starting a new semester as dean still. We're going to be taking a 2-week break so that we can get back into our schedules. The first couple weeks of class are always super hectic, whether you are teaching them or taking them or administering them. Just wanted to let y'all know that we're going to be taking a couple weeks off so that we can get settled and focus on that for a minute, and then we'll be back with Whitney's next episode, whatever she was going to be doing, because she hasn't told me.
Mwahaha.
It'll be a surprise. So
It'll be something.
it'll be something.
It'll
Well,
be something.
I'll tell you what will be something. This 11-page thing of research that I've got.
But it's not technical, correct?
It's not technical. It's not technical. We are covering my very first location feature over the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Aren't you not supposed to say lunatic anymore? Isn't that like not?
It's the name of the place. Like, it's the official name. Don't at me.
That
All
was fun.
right.
Speaking of Taylor going on a tangent, I wondered if anyone else manages to do this because it really it bothers Taylor. And I know if mom and dad are going to listen, they're going to be like, Whitney, what the fuck? But any of you guys, whenever you're driving and you are on low gas,
I
do you
fucking hate it when she does this.
do you instantly go to the nearest gas station, or do you know your limit and how far you can make it? Because for me, it almost becomes like a race. I'm like, oh, am I gonna make it? Oh, am I gonna make it? I always make it. I've never once run out of gas.
Yeah, on the way home yesterday, she was like, I have, what was it, 16 miles to get home, but I have 18 miles to the gallon, or 18 miles left on my tank. And I was like,
Yeah, but then you keep going, and because you know speed and everything, so it got to where it was like I have 12 miles left on my tank, but I only have 6 miles left. So I knew like I was going to be able to make it to the gas station that I normally go to instead of going to one in like a sketch part of town.
hmm,
I don't know. It's a fun little game just to see how like all that stuff goes.
it's really
Just
not.
curious.
It's
It's
really
it's a
not.
little interesting. It's
Mm-mm.
kind of like whenever you've got your GPS on and it's like, "Oh, you'll be there in 4 hours and 30 minutes," and you're like, "Haha, I'll be there in 3 hours and 30 minutes." Like, you race it.
Okay, but doing that doesn't leave you stranded if you run out of gas.
So, I'm never gonna be stranded. I know my limits, I know my car, I know me, and I know my streets. I know if I'm not gonna make it, I'm gonna pull over and get gas, but if I know I can make it, I'm like, "Haha, how close can I get?"
I never let mine get down that far. Once it hits a half a tank, I'm like, just top back off.
I was literally down to like 2 miles left. And this was a long time ago, and the Kroger down the street, it was literally 1 mile away. But I knew I could make it, so I made it home.
Dear God. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Are
I
you?
guess move on. We're
Yeah.
done with me.
Okay. Okay. So, I this is probably going to be long. I'll just say that. Taylor doesn't do short episodes.
What?
That's just
You have a long episode?
it's just how mama
Crazy.
rolls.
Mhm.
So, we're going to start with the history of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Okay.
But we're going to start before the actual construction began. So, this particular area was originally the settlement and farm of Henry Flesher Jr. and Sr. And Henry Sr. was the first person to live in the area that would eventually become Weston, West Virginia, which is where the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is actually located. And the land was granted to him by Governor Patrick Henry in 1783.
Okay.
After 1796, the land was actually transferred to his son Peter Flesher, and they named the town Fleshersville. That's what I did. I was like,
It sounds
yeah,
gross.
I don't like that. So the
Mm-mm.
Fleshers also did not like this, and they said that they wanted to change the name to Preston, and because the
I was
name
gonna
was
say the Fleshers, like the people of the town, because that's really exciting that you could go, like, you're a like Texan or whatever, or like
no, like
Austinite.
the
I
Flesher
guess.
family was not
Oh,
okay.
okay.
They were like, I don't want the town to be named that. So they requested
I
it be
mean,
changed to Preston, and they got it
now
approved.
if they had kept it as Flesher, they definitely would be like the Halloween town nowadays.
That's
Like,
legit.
I would go there, and you
I
would
mean,
have, like, all sorts of haunted houses and stuff. Yeah, I would go there.
they kind of already do have haunted houses.
Fake ones. They would have hay rides, they would have pumpkin carvings, and then you could go to the asylum.
I got you. Okay. So Preston County, so they named the town Preston, and then just a little less than a year later, they actually formed Preston County. And so they were like, well, shoot, we can't have a town named Preston and a Preston County, so we're going to change the name to Weston.
Why
And
not?
why not?
That
I don't know. I
No,
don't know.
I mean, that,
No, I
like,
know what you're saying. I
well,
don't know
okay,
why you can't have a town in a, like, isn't there an
because
Austin County? And then we
yeah,
have the city Austin? Yeah, I don't,
and
so
there's, like, a Travis and a Tyler and
yeah.
a Dallas. I don't think
Yeah.
there's, like, a Houston, but
So, but that was legit, like, the reasoning I saw was that Preston County was formed, and they were like, "Well, we don't wanna be that, so we're gonna change it to Weston." So,
maybe they
okay.
were just like, "Let's get as far away from the flesh part of it." They're like,
Probably,
"We're
yeah.
no longer naming it after the family. Let's just
Yes.
move on."
So, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum actually went by several different names over its lifespan. It starts as a Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in it was named this from 1858 to 1863. Then in 1863, it's renamed to the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane. And then 1915 is whenever it gets changed over to the Weston State Hospital, and it stays that until the 1980s, and then it becomes the Weston Hospital until it closes in 1994.
Wait, didn't you just say it was the Weston from whatever to the 1980s and then the Weston again?
It's the Weston State Hospital, and then it becomes the Weston Hospital. They just
Oh,
got rid of the state part.
well, excuse me. Pretentious.
Mhm. So this building was originally a total of 269 acres, and it was across from the West Fork River in Weston. And they purchased it for about $9,809.12. And in today's money, that's approximately $365,000, 678.01.
Oh, that penny.
That penny, dude. So once it was actually all built, the entire property encompassed a total of 666 acres. And I put in my notes,
666?
yeah, it was like, ooh, spooky.
It's spookarookers. We've not
It's
had
spooked.
spookarookers in a while,
No, we haven't. Yeah, because I haven't said spooky dookie.
and I've not said spookarookers.
Yep.
Shit's just been crazy, so
Here is where Taylor got into her geological thing. This building is made of a hand cut blue sandstone. And the second I saw blue sandstone, I was like, excuse me, because
yeah, it was like,
I've
"Fake, fake, it's fake."
yeah. I was like, as a geologist, that don't make no sense. So I got a little bit further into that. It is a sandstone that was mined from the Harrison County Quarry at Mount Clair, and it's specific to the Dunkard group. And this is a bluish gray sandstone that weathers to a yellow brown. It's fine grained and it can be conglomeratic in some places. Typically has thin to massive crossbeds. So what this indicates is that it was in a windy environment. Yeah, Whitney's like, I thought you said this isn't going to get technical.
Well, I was like, you just said a lot of things, and all I'm really wondering is, so blue sandstone is a real thing?
Yes, blue sandstone is a real thing. It
Cool.
makes up about 25 to 35% of the Dunker group, and it originates from the Permian time period, which means that it's about 298.9 to 272.3 million years old at the surface.
You remember when you had that one student that was like, "I'm taking this class to prove that the Earth isn't as old as it actually is, or they say it is?"
Yes. Yes, I do.
I'm just bringing that back
Yeah.
up.
She
Anyways,
was a she was a geology major, and she said that the Earth wasn't more than 2,000, 3,000 years old, and I was like, "You what?" She was a conundrum to all of us.
really,
So,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah. I think about her often.
Do you?
Yeah, because it just kind of like, I don't know, like, was she having an existential crisis or something? Did she need help that we didn't, like, help her?
Probably, probably. So, this is claimed to be the largest hand-cut stone building in North America, and it is the second largest in the world, only second to the Kremlin in Russia. So,
Damn.
surrounded by a park and enclosed by a large wrought iron fence. I think the fence is like 4 feet high or something like that. And it was
So
created to house,
easy to climb over.
yes, easy to, well, easy for athletic people to climb over. You can't see my fat ass doing that.
I'm just thinking it's shorter than I am.
I can't like step over a waist high concrete block, Whitney.
I'm just, if I was stuck in the asylum, I'm
You
thinking
could
I
call
could make
you could make it. Yeah, that's fair.
especially if I
Okay.
got like that, strength going, that adrenaline and everything just like yeet
Sure.
right over the
Sure.
fence. Okay.
So it was created to house 200 to 250 patients. I found a bunch of sources on this. One says 200, the other says 250. So it's a bit whatever.
But how many did it actually house? Because they
It
always say it houses this many, and then they're like, "But we put 3,000 in there."
it housed 2,400 patients in the 1950s.
Oh, damn, I was close.
Yes, you were very close. Yes. There were 13 buildings total. I could only find info on 11 of them. For some reason, I couldn't find any info on the last two buildings, but there's the main building, which housed the majority of the patients. There was the medical center, geriatric center, forensic center, TB. Oh, there's a moth in here. Okay, good.
I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Kelly's looking at the ceiling, and I was like, "Ugh." Okay, so the TB building, the original canteen, which I guess went up for demolition, and then the new canteen, which was built in the 1980s, maintenance building, women's auxiliary building, greenhouse pump house, and the criminally insane ward, which was built in 1949. So this originally was built on what's known as the Kirkbride plan. And Kirkbride was a doctor that believed that the people with mental illnesses were not people that should be shunned away or that should be jailed or anything like that. They should be taken to a place that has light and fresh air and basically given a place for asylum because asylum means safety or protection.
Mhm.
He basically said if we remove these people from the environment that's making them experience these symptoms, then perhaps they'll be able to get better. So the building was built according to the McBride plan. I'm sorry, Kirkbride, not McBride. And it was projected at a cost of $253,000, but additions brought the cost up to about $395,000. In today's money, that's about $14,700,000.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like, you're already at 200, you might as well just bump it up to 300.
Might as,
Like,
I mean, yeah,
whatever.
might
It's,
as well.
pocket change.
Pocket change. So it was designed to incorporate light, fresh air, and nature into the building. The doorways were always positioned so that sunlight would flood all of the wards, and there were open spaces for patients to gather and eat. The grounds were very nicely landscaped, very pastoral, very calm, and kind of removed from society.
Mhm.
So it was under construction from 1858 to 1881, and the total cost when everything was all said and done was about $625,000, which is about $23,200,000 now.
You said 1858 to 1881?
Yes.
So
So it
for,
took
like,
about 29
almost
years.
yeah,
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah. So the original construction was authorized by the Virginia legislature as the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum or the Trans-Allegheny Asylum for the Insane. I saw both of them in my sources. And they originally allocated $50,000 for them to do this. The main building was designed by Richard Snowden Andrews, and he did a bunch of other hospitals that followed the McBride or Kirkbride plan. Why do I keep saying McBride?
I don't know.
I don't know. The work was initially done by prison laborers, and then there was apparently a prison escape attempt by these laborers, and then they were caught again. And then shortly after that, they started pulling in skilled stonemasons from Germany and Ireland. The construction actually began in 1858, but it was very quickly stalled due to the breakout of the Civil War. And basically, the government of Virginia, because at this point it's all Virginia, the government of Virginia said, "We want you to return the unused funds of that $50,000 that we gave you so that we can use it to support our military."
'Cause of war.
Yeah, so there was a group known as basically they were going to reorganize the government. So the pro Northern reorganized government of Virginia stole the money so that they could use it to fund their, coming into power and stuff. And
Oh,
they
shit.
added, yeah, they added $40,000 to the construction so that they could continue to build the asylum.
Wait, 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 wait. So they stole 50,000 but gave them 40,000? So really they only stole 10,000?
No, so they stole 50,000 from them to get the pro Northern reorganized government of Virginia started, and then once they had enough, they repaid them $40,000 to keep it going.
Oh, but not the full amount. They were like, "Nah,
No,
we need that extra 10,000."
that 10K was a finder's fee, thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Taxes and shipping.
yes, there were raids that occurred where soldiers would come through and steal blankets, boots, clothing, and other goods, and they would run them in
Oh,
off the property. And
what?
one of my favorite stories from this was one person that was working the property had his boots stolen, and then maybe like a week later, they were placed like behind the fence where the gate was, and there was a note on it that said, "Sorry, these are too small."
Oh
So
my
he got his
god.
boots got returned back to him.
Well, I mean, at least he, like, didn't just take them and was like, "Ah, they don't fit," and then threw them away or something. He was like, "I guess I'll give them back."
I guess,
But
yeah.
they're on the other side of the fence, so all he can do is, like, stare at them.
No, 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 so the guy, like, put them over the other side of the fence so that they were on the asylum
Oh,
side of
so
the
that
fence.
okay, because I was like,
Yes.
"That's really a dick move to be like, okay, I stole your shoes, and then I brought them back, but you still can't have them." So
Yeah. So, each time the area was raided, it set construction back by 3 weeks. So, they were raided twice, so it set construction back by about a month and a half.
now, how are these guys able to rate it? Like, it just didn't have really good security?
Yeah, it wasn't in operation at this time, it was under construction.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. So the clock tower was completed in 1871 and the Weston Democrat in 1871 issue said the following about the clock tower, quote, "The large clock in the cupola will soon be finished. It will be like some politicians having three faces. The large bell which tolls the departure of the hours can easily be heard for some miles around." I just greatly enjoyed the three faces thing.
That's where I was stuck. I was like, "So you are admitting that politicians are two-faced?" Sorry
Well,
if you're a
yeah.
politician. It's kind of the, reputation, but,
Yes.
yeah,
And
that's
for
pretty good.
those yeah, for those who don't know the cupola, because I didn't know what a cupola was, it's the domed part of a building, like, on, like, a turret or something like that, it's like the
Mm.
domed. on a church or something. They also built segregation rooms for people of color. Those were completed in 1873. They also added a gas well in 1902, and the gas well actually allowed them to be much more independent than they already were. A lot of their food and goods and all of that kind of stuff was in-house. So they had their own
Hmm,
farm, they had their own dairy, they had a seamstress, a carpenter. I want to say at one point they were churning out and mending 14,000 garments per year.
damn. So, like, it sounds like that's the place to be for a zombie apocalypse kinda deal. Like, it's its own
Yeah.
little town, so
Yes, exactly. The hospital actually opened before it was finished with construction. So it opened in 1863 as the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane, and the first superintendent was Dr. James Hall. He was very quickly replaced by Dr. R. Hills. And
why? What did he
it
do?
didn't really say. It just said that I think he found a better opportunity and was just like, yeah, see ya.
Hmm,
So they started taking in patients on October 22nd of 1864, and they started with about 57 patients. Of those was a 37-year-old housekeeper from Ohio County that was committed for domestic trouble. I
okay.
came to believe that domestic trouble meant that they were being domestically unruly, like they weren't following what their husband was telling them to do.
So we're
Yeah.
getting into eating graham crackers to keep lust down.
What?
What? So that's an actual fact, is graham crackers were actually invented as a way, like, it was such a bland food that they were like, "Hey, you're horny as fuck, eat one of these, you'll be fine." And that was supposed to subdue, like, sexual urges?
I love graham crackers. What?
Yeah, that was, I believe it was graham crackers, but, yeah, that was the things they did way back when,
Hmm.
especially with women.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Mhm.
She
And then
probably
the
was like, "I don't wanna make dinner tonight," and he was like, Get to the asylum, bitch."
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that is basically what a lot of them were doing. Another woman was 33-year-old. She was a housekeeper from Brooke County. She was said to have been admitted because of acute dementia caused by the war. I don't know what the hell that means. So, I don't
like,
whatever.
PTSD kind of thing?
I guess. Yeah, that's all I
I
could
mean, I could
equate
see if
it
she
to.
was in, like, one of those, because they did have a lot of stuff, especially on those borders, where, like,
Mhm.
those properties would be
Yes.
taken over, and I could see, like, if she was on one of those having PTSD from the war,
Yes,
but
very much so, because this is right around the time that West Virginia is actually split from Virginia. So, I could
mm,
see that being a thing.
West Virginia.
Mountain Mama. Okay. So people could be admitted for ridiculous things: grief, brain congestion, feebleness of intellect, seduction, and novel reading.
I have so many questions. I wanna know what brain congestion is.
I mean, I can
Is that
only
like a brain
assume
fog or, like,
that's
headaches,
that's what
migraines?
I thought of was brain fog. Just I mean, I had such brain fog. I had a migraine 2 days ago, and I had such bad brain fog after it that I was literally just like, all I can do is lay here on the couch or on my bed and just watch TV and pretend like I understand it, like.
I mean, I forgot the word for tomato the other day
Mhm.
because my migraine was so bad. I was like that red thing, with the stuff inside, and it's, you know? And my
Like,
chef was like,
with salad.
yeah, she was like, I don't know, but I'm gonna pretend I do." And I was like, "Yeah, tomato. That's what it was."
Mhm. Yep.
So I would
Yes.
be in that asylum apparently.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, apparently, going to your whole, like, you didn't make dinner correctly, so or you didn't wanna make dinner, go to the asylum thing, husbands that wanted to keep a mistress and just wanted their wives out of the way would just take them to the asylum and abandon them.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
about right.
Yeah.
I also wanted to know about that seduction one. So, like, they just were like, they they just were too sultry or something, and they were like, "Nah, nah, fuck
Nah.
that, get out." Like,
That's the
nope,
devil's work.
that's the devil's work. Like, no, no, no. Take that red lipstick, take those high heels, and get the fuck out. Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, there it was ridiculous things. I mean, novel reading, like, "A woman has a brain." That's yeah, basically
Well, yeah,
what that came down to.
that's ridiculous, so
That's basically for women, it was like you're either too smart because you're reading novels or you're too dumb because of feebleness of intellect.
or, "I just don't want you,
I just don't want you, so please go live over here,
so
thanks.
please get out." Yeah.
Yes. So, of the 57 patients that were brought in, 3 died, 8 recovered, 9 were discharged, and 1 eloped. I'm assuming eloped means escaped.
Yeah, I would assume
Yeah,
so. What did the 3 die of?
it
It just
didn't
says they
say.
died?
Yeah, it just
Okay.
said they died. But there
Maybe
is
old.
a so I got a book, Whitney, I bought a book for this.
Oh, shit!
It is The Haunted History of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. It's written by Sherry Brake, and she actually goes into a series about the deaths that were in here. She has a whole list of reasons that the patients were actually admitted. And it also actually goes into the different salaries of the what the people made back then and stuff. And if you were a superintendent, you were doing good. You were making like 2,000 bucks a year, which is a lot back then.
Damn.
Yeah. So, this
Hmm.
is where I got a lot of information, and on top of that, I also read a dissertation for this. So,
Wow, look at you. You
yeah,
are, like, researching it up.
I did the fucking thing. In 1867, the census stated that were 45 patients, and then construction is still going on through this. The ultimate cost at the end of construction in 1881 was $725,000, so we're way over budget than from what we ended up with. There were
It makes me think of, like, Love It or List It or whatever, and they're like, "Well, we're not gonna be able to redo the bathroom because you
we're
had a
over budget.
wood-burning stove, and we need to put a gas-burning stove." Right, somehow now it, like, went way back in time. Anyways,
Uh-huh, yeah.
yeah.
So it housed we were already over the maximum capacity of the asylum at this point. So in
Mm,
1881, we were already at 717 patients, with it being 325 males and 392 females.
goddamn.
Yes. So now that the place is finished with construction and actually in operation, we see a lot of local farmers helping out with food, milk, beef. They had to import beef and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, they were pretty self sufficient.
Mhm.
The control of the hospital, and I think this is kind of where things start to get a little shaky. In 1909, the control of the hospital gets changed over to from the local board of directors to the West Virginia Board of Control in Charleston. So we're not just seeing the a local branch, a local board of directors has a little bit more control over what's going on at the hospital in real time versus a West Virginia board that's over a whole bunch of different hospitals because there's a whole bunch of asylums
Mhm.
already in place in West Virginia. You're kind of taking away a more direct supervisory board and giving it to a less direct supervisory board. So I think that's partially why we see the quality of treatment deteriorate.
Yeah, because no
In
one's really keeping anyone in line
Yeah.
with it,
Well,
so
and on top of that, you're talking about a massive amount of people and not enough staff. I mean, at one point the nurses were it was like 300 patients to one nurse.
Oh,
And
shit.
that's yeah, that's just not possible. It's insane. A lot of it was just the way that the hospital became viewed over time was more as a repository for the unwanted as
Mm,
opposed to a place for recovery and rehabilitation.
yeah.
So, in 1913 the name changes over to Western State Hospital, and in 1953 we change control of the hospital again to the Department of Mental Health. And this is where we get to the all-time high of 2,400 people in the
Jesus.
asylum. Whenever we get into the 1960s, we start to see a decline in the number of patients because we're starting to see more mental health treatments come out that are effective in managing these mental illnesses. That being said, a lot of what was brought to the Weston State Hospital were not mental illnesses. It was things like goiters or heartburn or, things, asthma, things that should be treated by a medical doctor, but people were literally just like, "You're broken. I don't want to deal with you. I'm going to send you here,"
You
which is
broke.
terrible. You broke.
You
So,
bore me.
yes. So in 1957, the mental health part of the Department of Mental Health was just rolled into the Department of Health, and that's what took over. So we're having a massive changeover of control of this hospital. The 1980s, it changes again to the Department of Health and Human Resources. And then on January 26, 1986, the West Virginia Governor Arch Moore, I'm assuming it's Arch Moore, like Archie, he announced that the hospital had officially lost its distinction as a mental institution.
Wow.
Despite this, in 1990, it was named the main building was named a National Historical Landmark. So over time, the treatment of the patients just got worse and worse. We start to see the outflux of patients over time. The older patients are dying off. 1994, the hospital is officially vacated due to the building of the William R. Sharp Jr. Hospital, and it's a newer facility, so the patients were moved over there.
Hmm.
So
I
1999.
I didn't realize
Go ahead.
how recent this all
Yes.
was. Like, yeah,
Yes.
you started in the 1800s, but like we're you just said 1999, like we're not that
Yeah.
far away from that. So,
Right.
hmm,
Right. So this is possibly just anecdotal. It may not be true, but it's something that I saw that in 1999, the interior of all 4 floors of the asylum were completely ruined when a group of police officers came to play around a paintball for one night. And 3 of the officers were fired because of this,
good.
because they
'Cause like,
defaced a national historical landmark.
well, you defaced it and like, bruh, what's your
Yeah. Like,
job? You're supposed to
yeah.
be preventing people from doing this shit. Like, come on,
Right.
man.
Yes. From 1994 until 2007, it sat vacant. In 2007, it was purchased at auction by a millionaire, billionaire, something like that.
Sure.
And yeah, and now it's privately owned. So that's when they switched the name back to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. They host tours and other events to save up money to restore the property. They have restored quite a bit of it already, so that's great.
That's cool.
The I'm going to go into the different types of hunting tours that they have, but some of the upcoming events that they have, they just held a flea market, and it was one of the largest flea markets in the state. They have a haunted house, they have paranormal tours, they have ghost hunts. They have an event called Hearse Mania, which I was like, the hell is
What?
that?
It
Yeah.
makes me think of like, oh my gosh, what's the monster truck rallies and stuff, but it's all like hearses
Yeah.
and stuff, and then they could
Yeah.
actually have the grave digger. The
Oh,
grave digger!
I love it. That'd be great. And then they're also home to something known as the Asylum Ball, which I was like,
I would go.
I would
I
go.
would oh man, I would dress up and everything, like, "Oh shit, I wanna
Yeah, that'd
go."
be
That would be
fun.
cool.
Okay, well, we'll make it so they have a whole list of things you can do.
They have
Like
an
from
itinerary,
yes.
a
So and
schedule.
they've got events that you can do that are only available during their special events. So I'll get into that in a second.
Okay.
So before we get into that stuff, let's talk about the tragedies that happened on the property.
Oh yeah, let's bring it back down. We were too
Yeah,
excited. Let's go.
too excited. Yes.
Back down.
So, October 3rd, 1935 at 10 p.m., a fire breaks out in the attic of Ward 6 in the South Wing. And
Hmm.
up to this point, there have been little fires set because you've got mental patients in there and you're likely to have a pyromaniac in there. So, you see these
Or just
fires set.
accidents.
Yeah, I mean, there could be accidents, but all of the little fires that they found were set by, in, I say inmates, set by patients.
Ah,
So this one was admitted to having been started by an 18-year-old male who started a fire with some papers, and then it got out of control too fast for him to put it out, and he got scared and he ran. The rumor is they were like, we don't know how we're going to get all 400 patients out of this building without causing mass panic. So they rang the dinner bell because the cafeteria was in a different building from the one that was on fire, and all the patients were like, okay. And they managed to get all 390 patients out into the cafeteria,
I mean,
And,
sure. I'm sure the cooks were like, "Wait a second. Like,
what
what
the
the
fuck?
fuck? What? It's not it is 11 PM, y'all. Like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? Get out."
So, 3 people managed to narrowly avoid death. Oddly enough, there were no injuries and no fatalities in this fire, so it's great, but it did completely destroy the building. So,
Oh,
one man was sleeping in the attic, and he woke up to find that he was trapped by the flames. He went to the window, and 2 of the firefighters pulled a ladder up. The guy managed to bend the bars, because there are bars on the outside of the windows to keep patients from jumping out of them. He managed to bend the bars and get through them, and they carried
damn.
him down to safety.
That adrenaline, man. Like,
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. And then 2 more men were able to escape a crushing death whenever part of the roof and the cupola crashed down where they had been standing just a few minutes earlier.
Oof.
Yes. So that's the main, I don't wanna say natural disaster because it was a fire that was set, but it's the only non-murdery thing. Oh, we're gonna get
Well,
into it.
that was it was not what I was expecting. I thought you were gonna say, like, I don't know, like, death kinda like, just because there were no deaths in there, so I thought you were just gonna be like, it was just a noteworthy incident, but then you said
Yeah.
murder.
Yeah, there's
So
quite a bit.
I need to
So,
know
but
about the murder.
yes, we'll get to it. Before we get to that, I want to talk about the employee schedules and their pay because this led to a bunch of tragedies. So, in the beginning, employees were expected to do 12-hour days. And
Ugh,
you're talking about 12-hour days with 300 patients to one nurse, and that's
yeah. I was
not.
gonna say, I've done 12-hour days in the kitchen, and it's a no. It's a nah
Yeah.
for me, dog. I can't imagine nurses, like, even now,
Oh, yeah.
nurses, like,
Yeah.
doing you guys rock. Like, wow.
Like,
Yeah.
I have always said whenever I have students that are like, "Oh, I'm gonna be in nursing school," I'm like, "Man, it takes a real special person to be able to do that." Like,
Yeah,
I
not
know.
only, like, caring for people, but, like, doing those shifts because you're
Yes.
not sleeping well. Like,
Mhm. And doing it with a smile on your face.
yeah.
Like, I can't I
I
go through a 12-hour day at my job where I can lock myself in my office and not talk to people if I want to, and by the end of it, I'm like, "If you look at me, I'm going to kill you."
yeah,
So,
I mean, just doing, like, 4 or 5 hours at my job where I've got a bunch of people running around, like, it is exhausting, so I can only
yes.
imagine having, not just so many people that you are dealing with, but also that you are literally their life is in your hands, like,
Yep.
whew, damn, y'all.
Yep. And
Yeah.
especially for the nurses and the staff here, because not only are they working 12-hour days, they're only getting a day off every week or 2.
Oof.
So, yeah. And so they would wake up at 5:45 a.m. They would start doing their rounds, waking up patients. They had a 10 p.m. curfew unless they got special permission to stay out until 11:30.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes, they did switch to 8-hour days eventually. And they got they got to work in shifts and get some time off.
Mhm.
However, they're dealing with patients that are violent and that will attack them and that kind of stuff. So you're already on low sleep. You're not getting paid enough because they were paid so little that many of them started resorting to stealing from the hospital in order to get by. And then
Ah,
most of the employees were paid so little that they qualified for food stamps. The annual salary for a nurse at Trans-Allegheny in 1990 was $16,000.
wow.
Yeah. So you're not getting paid, you're having to steal to make ends meet, and you're having to be up 12 hours a day, and on top of that, your patients are attacking you.
And you live on the property?
Yes, you live on the property.
So, like, d so wait a second. They have to steal to make ends meet, so that implies they have to pay for their room and board,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And for their own food and all of that?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Like, if there were some that lived off premises and some that lived on premises, most of the time, it was the attendants that lived on premises.
Mm,
So, Yeah, that was what they called the people that the nurses that actually helped with the patients were attendants. So,
Okay.
yes. So, you've got very poorly treated employees just due to the fact that you've got so many freaking patients.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then on top of that, there are very horrific treatments. So there is I saw one site said that there were 400 to 500 deaths estimated, and then another site that said it was closer to 30,000.
Jesus Christ.
So I was like, whoa, either really low or really high. But there are 2,000 people buried in the cemetery. So I'm leaning more towards the 30,000.
So what do you
Starting.
think happened to those non-buried people?
So that actually comes up.
Oh god.
Yes. Yeah, that
Okay.
comes up here in a little bit. So I'm going to go through the list of treatments that they used to do. First was bloodletting, which is
Uh,
literally, for those who don't know what bloodletting is, it's tourniqueting a part of your body and then slicing into a vein and letting the bad blood run out. So this was back in the day. I think bloodletting was still used up until about the 1950s, 60s, but it since has been,
let's say,
at least
wasn't that the
in
same concept
America.
as like leeches?
Yes, the leeches would drink the bad blood out of you and
Yeah.
toxins and all that stuff, yeah. The next one was insulin coma therapy. This is
I'm sorry, what?
injecting injecting insulin into patients to force them into a diabetic coma as a form of anesthesia.
Why don't you just use anesthesia?
They didn't have it.
Then, I don't know, knock them out or something. Don't put them into a
Mhm,
coma.
mhm. So, along with that, another way that they would basically knock people out in order to do surgeries and that kind of stuff was electroshock therapy. So, they would lay somebody down on the table, put electrodes against their temples, and then run a voltage through them. And the people that underwent so this was typically the anesthesia that was used for lobotomies, which we'll get into. The patient would start to convulse. Eventually, they would go unconscious. One patient actually died because they went into cardiac arrest due to the voltage moving through them, because duh.
Yup. Duh.
And then some would receive this up to 3 times a week, even if,
Jesus.
yeah, even if they protested against it because the doctors believed it was in their right to do that treatment.
Yeah.
So some of them would receive serious brain injuries and never recover from this. The patients always ended up being dazed and confused, and basically everybody was like, I'd rather him be dazed and confused than cause him problems. So it's kind of like with a toddler where you're like, as long as they're occupied, I don't care what's going on.
Yeah.
So it was reported by the patients that received this treatment that it was like having a bomb fall on you or being in a fire and getting burned up.
Ah,
So,
that's awful.
yes. So lobotomies, specifically a transorbital lobotomy, known also as the ice pick method.
No,
This is some yes.
I
This
don't
was
know.
something that was brought forward by Dr. Walter Freeman. And this dude, well, okay, we'll get into it. So the way that this works is you are knocked unconscious through one form or another. A one or two prong device is driven through the orbital socket of your eye and into the brain. And basically, once it gets in there, the doctor takes the thing and jams it around and like wiggles it around to destroy whatever part of the brain they're trying to focus on. And it was thought to ease the severest symptoms of this. There was one dude, and I'm assuming that this is Walter Freeman, performed 228 lobotomies in 2 weeks. And typically they would take him like 10 minutes at a time. So
Yeah, so at that
he,
point, he's not focused on a specific part. He just legit is scrambling brains. Like
oh
he
yeah.
to do that many, and I mean also to do any of them,
Hmm.
really. I mean, back then, of course, you thought you were helping, but like, guys.
So Walter Freeman was famous for doing these lobotomies. He would do them for $25, which is about $503 in today's money, and he made a spectacle of it. He would encourage people to come watch him do this. So he is most famously known for doing a lobotomy on John F. Kennedy's sister, Rosemary. She was 23 years old, and they believed that she had some mental disability and that lobotomy would cure it. She ended up with severe mental and physical disabilities after this because duh.
Yeah.
And basically, Walter Freeman didn't have anything done to him because he was like, well, it's experimental.
Oh, well,
Over 4 decades, he is thought to have performed 4,000 lobotomies, 2,500 of which used the ice pick procedure.
and when did lobotomies become unacceptable? Like, I'm just wondering, at what point were they like, "Okay, Freeman, we gotta lock you up."
Yeah, here is that moment.
Great.
Helen Mortensen was his very last patient. She was receiving her third lobotomy from Freeman. She
Third.
died third. She died of cerebral hemorrhage on the operating table, and they basically said, "Nope, you're done." And they called for him to be banned from doing any more lobotomies. So, from that point on, he decided, I'm done," because, he's at
So,
retirement age anyway.
okay, so he's banned from doing it, but there's no legal
No.
holding on him at all. He just, "Nah, you're done." And he's like, "Yeah, you're
Yep.
right. I'll finish. I'm good." Nothing like, "Hey, you 1 did this to this person 3 times, but then 2 murdered her."
Yep.
Like, I'm sure she didn't want it.
I have no idea. I mean, at this point, you're talking about mentally ill patients, and you can back then make the
The decision
claim
for
that they
them.
didn't know, or they didn't know what they wanted. They didn't know what was best for themselves.
Yeah.
No, there was no legal ramification for him. It's
Mm.
likely that hundreds of patients died under his use of this. Many of them had to be retaught, and well, not many of the people that died, but those who survived had to be retaught how to eat and how to use the bathroom. Lots of them would have relapses back into their mental illness. Some of them never recovered, and it's reported that about 15% died.
Jeez.
So, here are some horrific facts, as though it hasn't already been horrific. Freeman never wore gloves or a mask when he did these.
Ugh.
Uh-huh.
That just like, not only from, like, a sanitation point, but, like,
Yep.
just bleh.
Yeah. So, he also lobotomized 19 minors, including a child as young as 4 years old.
What?
Yes.
No one at any point was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa.
Mm-mm.
They can't drink, so we shouldn't take their mind. Shouldn't
Nope.
knock that shit."
Nope.
Okay.
So, you wanna know what the big kicker is?
Do I?
This man was never formally surgically trained.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
What's even more mind-blowing than that is those that were hung on
We're
his
letting
every
him do we're
word.
doing the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yes. So, those are lobotomies. We've still got several more treatments that are horrific.
Agreed.
The next one is the ice water or continuous water bath. And it is reported that 1,200 patients received a total of 4,404 baths that averaged on 7 hours each. So, yes, what this is you place the person in a hammock, you submerge the person from the neck down, and put a canvas over the bathtub so that only their head is protruding from it.
Oh, no.
They could be in there for hours or even days. They believed that the bath would induce fatigue without hurting the mind and stimulate the excretory function of the skin and the kidneys. Basically, you relax so your body will start to flush out whatever toxins are in you.
But somehow, the thought of being trapped in a bathtub and not being able to move is not going to cause psychological damage?
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
uh huh.
Okay.
The next one is the needle shower.
Nope, I'm out.
It's not a needle shower, but 2,000 patients received this. It's the pummeling of patients with high pressurized water, about 40 pounds per inch, at 50 degrees or at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow, for a minute or two. And this was thought to stimulate heat and blood and was able to help depressed patients. I mean, honestly, that's cold for me, but, get me under a hot water thing and do some high pressure water. That sounds pretty good to me. I'm
Yeah,
not I'm
because
not
then that
condoning
turns into,
that by
like,
any means.
well, what you're talking about is, like, jets in like
Yeah,
a
like
whirlpool or
the
something.
the hydro massage that you could get in the mall.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Like that.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
But I don't have a feeling this was for relaxation purposes,
No, no.
especially with cold water.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
the next one is known as a wet pack, and 12 patients received this, or a reported 12 patients received this, but probably more, at an average of 5 hours each. Basically, you take a naked person, you lay them onto 3 blankets that are wrung out with cold water, you wrap the blankets around them, and you leave them there with a cold pack on their head.
So you induce hypothermia.
Yeah. So they could only move their head, fingers, or toes, and whenever they originally started with you'd be there for a few hours, but as the population increased, it was harder to keep track of how long somebody had been there, so they could be left there for days. So as the sheets dried, they would tighten around the body and force the body heat to be retained, and that would make the patient feel like they were burning or suffocating. So, this was thought to be beneficial in treatment for restlessness.
Sure. Burning alive
Sure.
sounds very restful.
Yeah. So that
Mhm.
last part about feeling like you're burning alive, that's known as a dry pack. They of course had seclusion cells. A lot of the staff were told you are not allowed to restrain a patient for if the patient gets violent or something like that in the early parts of the thing. So they were typically just taken to seclusion cells, and they could be kept there for days or weeks at a time, or for as long as the physicians or the staff wish them to be in there.
Mm, okay,
Hmm.
because seclusion has not proven to be any issue
Damaging.
on someone's mind at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Another thing that they would do is forced sterilization.
Nope.
Yep. Basically, if a woman kept having babies, but she was not in the mental state to handle the babies, they would forcibly sterilize her to keep her from having more.
Mm,
Hmm. They were, after a while, allowed to use restraint. They would use straitjackets, cuffs, sleeves, bed straps, and cribs. Cribs were literally beds with iron bars on them that the patient could be strapped down to.
damn.
Yes. And then over time, we start to see the formation of medications that they would use for controlling the patients. So the first one is chlorpromazine. Oh God, chlorpromazine. Yes. Also known as thorazine. This was used initially to treat psychotic disorders, and it's basically a sedative. It was enough that it could basically put you into a catatonic state. So if you got, unruly or violent or something like that, they would inject you with this and you would be put into a catatonic state. And it became known as the chemical lobotomy over
Mm,
time. In the 1960s, it was thought to be a cure for schizophrenia. Obviously, that is not the case.
no.
So that's fun. And then we have laudanum, which was an opiate. They gave these to patients regularly to
Yeah.
control pain. So opiate addiction was given. Metrazole was used as a circulatory and respiratory stimulant. This replaced electroshock therapy. And yeah, so those are the treatments that were used on the patients on a day to day basis.
Dang.
It is needless to say that a lot of the patients were super violent. So
I
a lot
mean,
of our,
yeah, after any
yeah,
of that, you would
you,
become violent, even if you weren't
yes,
when you went in, because you don't want anything happening to you. You
exactly.
got
You're
your
going to,
fight or flight going, like, mm-mm.
right. So a lot of the well, I say a lot, several of the female employees were raped. A lot of the staff was attacked. One nurse went missing and was found 2 months later at the bottom of an unused staircase.
Oh, damn.
Many of the violent were kept in cages, literal like prison cages. So there are some specific events that occurred. First is 1927, a woman named Mrs. Hoffman. She was in the hospital for only 48 hours and she was restrained for much of this time. She had bruises on her shoulder, arms, back, and lower limbs, and the family questioned the treatment of the hospital. Basically, they were like, she didn't have these when she came in, and now she got these.
She's only been here for 2 days.
Yes. She came in suffering from a goiter, and she had gone to her church because that's what you did back in the day, and the minister told her God would heal her. Well, she started acting really strange after that. She started thinking she was the Virgin Mary and that her doctor was God. So she started singing
Ruh-roh.
loudly, yeah, and not eating. They gave her a lot of morphine injections. They gave her 5 to 6 morphine injections when she got to the hospital at Fairmount, and then 2 more in the morning when she was transported over to Weston. That's a
Damn.
lot of morphine.
Yeah.
So, she was extremely ill in the car, and whenever she got to Weston, she became violent because she was like, "Y'all are mistreating me, and, I
Well,
would be
that
violent
and
too."
morphine knocks you the fuck out, so I'm sure she got there and was like, "I don't know where the fuck I am and why I'm here or any of that." I would get belligerent. Like,
Right.
ah,
Oh, yeah, definitely. So ultimately, after they laid this case out, the judge determined that the hospital had acted within their rights to protect themselves and the patient, and they were not at fault for her ultimate death.
mm-mm.
So, yeah.
I would sue the
Then,
judge. I would be like, "Change it. You fix that. You fucked up.
yep,
They fucked up."
yep, yes. Then we have Muriel C. Creamer. She was admitted in May 18th of 1963. She was an African American housewife that was found dead in her room on Ward C on May 25th. So this was only a few days after she was admitted.
Okay.
She was found around 9 p.m. She had been strapped to her bed at the waist and her feet, and she had a muslin cloth around her neck, and her death was ruled a homicidal strangulation. They believe it was her roommate. Her name was Wanda Maxine James, and she was found either standing over her or on the other side of the room. There's conflicting reports on that. But she freely admitted she did it because Creamer had made improper advances toward her.
Okay.
Yes. Then we have one of the most famous ones, Dean Metheny. He was killed in 1987. He was 49 years old. Dean was a mute patient and had an intellectual disability that caused him to act like a small child, though he did occasionally become aggressive.
Mm.
So he was murdered by David Mason and James Woods. I saw actually two different reports on who actually killed him. I saw something about a Jim in James and then also David in James. So I'm not 100% sure who actually is at fault here.
I think
But David
James
was
for sure.
well, sure.
Just saying.
David David was 25 and James was 30. They snuck up on him for apparently no reason. They attempted to hang him. Basically, they would wrap a bed sheet around his neck, string him up on the pipe that was in the room. They
Are
would
these
lift him
2
up.
patients as well?
Yes, these are two
Okay.
very violent patients that they were in the same room with Dean. They would lift him up until he passed out and let him back down, and then lift him up until he passed out
Mm.
and then let him back down. Eventually, they got tired of doing that and they decided that they were going to end it. So they put him down on the floor. They put the bedpost of the bed on his head and then jumped on it until the bed frame touched the floor.
Ugh. Good
Yes,
God.
absolutely, like, just brutal, just absolutely brutal,
Yeah, that's
senseless.
horrific.
Yes. So in 1992, we had George Edward Bodie die after a fight with another patient. So he was 46 years old. He got into a fight with David Mason, who was one of the patients that was thought to have killed Dean Metheny. He tried to choke Bodie with his hands, but then Bodie fought back, and basically David beat him to death. And then they found him, I think, the next day. Mason never said what the fight was about or how it started.
Huh. Dang.
1992, we had Brian Scott Lee. He was 21 years old. I found very little about this, but he was thought to have committed suicide and he wasn't found for 8 days.
Wow.
And then there was an undated event from a housekeeper recounting from either
The
this
book.
book or one of the other places that I was looking. There was a nice guy, he was younger. This is what the housekeeper is saying. He was a nice guy, he was younger, he didn't cause trouble. He got up one morning, put on his clothes, took his medication, got breakfast, got cleaned up, then went outside and jumped in front of a milk truck and was killed instantly in front of the arts and crafts building.
Ugh.
Whenever the staff was brought outside to basically take care of him, The boss
Mhm.
ended up saying, "All right, go get the water hose, clean that mess up." That's
Wow.
just an insight into how these people were thought of, which is awful.
Well, and not only how they were thought of, but the amount of deaths unreported they probably had.
Yes.
Because if he was
Yes.
just like, "Ah, it's another mess, like, we had 12 of those this morning, get rid of it." Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. The most famous part of this, outside of what we've already talked about, is the absolutely horrific conditions that these patients
Mhm.
were in. So they were first noted in 1938 whenever the Mental Hospital Survey Committee was asked to evaluate the hospital. So they received mostly mentally ill, epileptics, alcoholics, drug addicts, and non educable mental defectives. That's the patient intake.
Okay.
At the time that they were visiting, there were 661 patients, I'm sorry, 1,661 patients. 940 of them were men, 721 were women. There was a lot of disrepair in the buildings. Some of the people were sleeping on metal beds, some of them were on cots. There were areas of the hospital that were so decrepit that they should not be being used, but they were still used because it was so overcrowded.
Yeah.
There's a report that that's likely played a role in its closing over time. The problem was World War II was coming. So a lot of all of the money that would have gone to repairing this was used for the war. So
Yeah.
in 1949, Mrs. Charles Hoag wrote to the paper about the conditions of Weston State Hospital. She said that there were more than 1,800 men and women jammed into rooms with as many as 6 or 7 people in one room. Most of them slept on the floor in freezing conditions. The old section of the hospital was miserably decrepit quarters, which could never pass minimum inspection standards for domesticated animals. So,
Damn.
splintered wood, urine soaked floors, not enough tables and chairs, large rooms lit by a single spare light bulb, and little to no heat.
Mm.
The one of the patients, so she went in to actually interview some of these patients, and she went into, I think, one of the seclusion cells, and she got there as that particular patient was being fed his food, and she said that it smelled terrible, and the patient in the seclusion cell next to them said it looked like a hog pen. It smells even worse. Yeah.
Wow.
Some of the windows had so much grime on them that daylight could not get through it.
Ugh.
Mrs. Hoag was like, nah, bitch. And she started writing into the paper. I think this was the Charleston Gazette whenever she started writing into this. She sent every single day since she did her initial expose on this. January 3rd, 23rd of 1949, she writes in, quote, any way you look at it, it comes out that the people who run our mental hospitals are doing a fine job under insurmountable handicaps. Disgraceful conditions are not their fault. It is the fault of the people of the state who refuse to furnish and fund the proper care for our mentally ill. The next day, she says, quote, there can be no valid excuse for the state to subject its unfortunate wards to inhuman indignities. Then the next day, she writes in, the contrast between the good and the atrocious at Weston is a direct challenge to the people of West Virginia to give all our mentally ill what is now available only to a pitiful few. The next day, she says,
Oh
are
my
the
god.
people of I know, quote, are the people of West Virginia willing to condone the inhuman conditions of our mental institutions? This finally gets the West Virginia legislature to visit the hospital. They see how awful it is. They see that an entire ward is in complete disrepair and is actually should be, what do they call it whenever like you should not go into it?
Condemned?
Condemned, thank you. Yes, so it should be condemned. So the hospital at this point is given more resources to make repairs, and the patients were moved out of the old wings while the repairs were done, and they were very shortly moved back in. These renovations still did not meet their needs for treatment.
Shocking.
The Charleston Gazette in 1985, so this is right before the asylum was actually closed down, they exposed that the asylum was dirty and unkempt and that patients were left naked and confined to dirty wards with bathrooms smeared in feces.
Ew.
Yes. So the deaths this is where we get into the markers, and you were like, what about, where are all these 2,000 bodies going and that kind of thing. Who died had their next of kin notified. Often the next of kin would not come by to claim or identify the bodies. Yes, the bodies who were unidentified were given a number. They were buried in the cemetery and then given a simple marker with the number on it. However, when repairs were needing to be done, the markers would get repurposed, and that would leave no way of identifying the body.
God.
Right now, because no bodies were ever cremated, all of them were buried. The cemetery has 2,000 people in it that most of them cannot be identified.
Jeez. And I'm
Yes.
sure they're not like one per grave either.
Yeah, I'm sure that at this point it's, yeah,
Mm.
just impossible to, yeah.
Now, you probably could. I mean, I couldn't, you couldn't, but with all the DNA technology and everything, they probably could go through and start trying to identify these
Definitely.
people because they
Yeah,
should
you
have enough
could.
like familial DNA in one way, shape, or form to get to that person.
Yes, and that's assuming that the familial DNA has actually been submitted by that person's family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. But you could always DNA type them and keep it on file just in case it does
Someone
happen one
does.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the different hauntings that we have in
Hmm.
Trans-Allegheny are numerous. It's in the book and in the dissertation and all the things that I read. It's not as much as Waverly Hills Asylum, which I'm going to go over eventually, but there's still a bunch. So on the first floor, we've got the Civil War wing and or the veterans area. We have Ruth. She was a former patient who is violent towards men. She likes to throw things at them. She will push people, she whistles, and she is said to haunt that particular hallway.
When you say whistle, I'm assuming it's not like a tune. It's like a whoop kind of whistle. Like yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So the second floor, they see shadow figures, of course. There is reports that a man was stabbed 17 times and that two patients committed suicide. I wasn't able to find too much on that, but I it was mentioned in some of the hunts that I talk about in a minute. So apparently two patients committed suicide at the same time. They hung themselves with their own bed sheets.
In the same room or just like coincidental kind
No,
of
in the same room. Yeah, in the same room.
like a pact.
On the second floor, they typically have EVPs of get out. They'll have names being called. People tend to feel the emotions of anguish and grief, and some people feel suffocated.
Mm.
So the third floor is the geriatrics, nurses' quarters, and auditorium. This is where Dean's room is. So Dean Metheny. He's a very quiet spirit. He speaks up and will hang out with you as long as Big Jim and David don't show up. So Big Jim was the name for James. If they do show up, he'll vanish.
So they're still there?
So my understanding is that that energy is residual, and whenever
Okay.
that energy replays itself, he will shrink back from.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also Nurse Elizabeth, dressed in an old-fashioned nurse uniform. I said Elizabeth. So,
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. So she's dressed in an old fashioned nurse uniform. She can be seen carrying a medicine tray around the corridors. You always see her from the corner of your eye, and if you ever look directly at her, she vanishes. Then we have Big Jim or David Mason. So Joe was the other one that I saw, Joe and David. But these are Dean's murderers. The energy of the room changes whenever they make themselves known. They will make people very ill and uncomfortable when they show up.
Okay.
The upper floors are incredibly active. These are supposedly the most active parts of the asylum. So it starts with Lily. She was a former patient in Ward R. She was on the fourth floor and she was born in 1863. And the legend that goes with this, I'm not sure if it's legend or if it's actually documented, but she was born in the asylum to her mother. Mother's name was Gladys. I mean, obviously, she was born to her mother.
Nope. She just appeared next to her mother. She just poof.
Poof. Her mother reproduced asexually. She
She
just
was like,
budded.
"This is my child."
Yep. So Gladys was supposedly raped by Civil War soldiers, and she went crazy because of it. So they
Fair.
admitted her and found out she was pregnant when she was admitted. She passed away during childbirth, which left the infant alone. The hospital staff named her Lily. Lily lived in the asylum for the rest of her life, very short life. She contracted pneumonia, and that killed her at age 9.
Wow.
So she is a very playful spirit. We typically see balls moving independently. You'll hear child laughing. All of your electronic equipment will start to go off whenever you're in Lily's room. There are
Mm.
lots of toys and trinkets in her room, and there is a little pink music box that she likes to play, and it will play on its own. That's her favorite
Wow.
item.
Hmm.
Yes. There's also an entity known as Slewfoot.
I'm sorry, what?
Slewfoot.
Slewfoot.
Yes.
¿Por qué?
They didn't say why he's named that. That's just his name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Roamed the upper floors, and so this was a patient. He roamed the upper floors and he killed and tortured people in the upstairs bathroom. He haunts that bathroom and the upstairs floors.
Okay.
And then there was also a man named James that died of a heart attack in an upstairs bathroom. Apparently, he stayed out of trouble when he was at the asylum, so there's not a lot of information reported on him.
How sad. He was like, "I'm just
Yeah.
trying to, like, not make trouble," and then he dies, and he's like, "And I'm still here."
Yep. Yep. So there's also a large black mass-like object that they think is a demon. It's like whenever they asked what it was, it came back as saying demon. I don't know what I believe on that, but there
I
is
don't
a
know,
black.
because I do feel like if I was a ghost and they were like, "What are you?" I would be like, "A demon."
I'm a
Like,
fucking demon.
"I'm a
Yeah.
demon, bitch," and that's I would it would probably come out exactly like that too. "I'm a demon, bitch."
So that
Um,
actually plays into something that I learned later in one of the hunts that I have. So keep that in
okay.
mind. So there's also the creeper that crawls along the floor. He likes to slither along the walls and the floors, and I don't like it. Yeah. And then a man named Jacob Ayers or Ayers. He was admitted for
Air,
alcoholism,
air.
and they think he was a Civil War soldier. And yeah, there are Civil War soldiers that are seen in the halls all over the property because we had all that stuff going on in the Civil War.
Stealing shit.
Stealing shit. If you go into the lobotomy recovery area, you can hear murmurs, you can hear cries of sorrow. Yeah. You can always see dark creatures racing around the corners. And there are
Ooh,
supposed. Oh, yeah.
ooh, I
No,
don't
don't
like
like.
that.
Don't
Mm-mm,
like. Yeah.
mm-mm.
And then there were 2 teen boys in the 1940s who died that were patients in the asylum. People will leave, like, vodka and cigarettes and cards and stuff like that for them so that they can play and have a good time in the afterlife.
They're 14,
Yeah.
which, of course, my brain is like, they're 14 and people are leaving them vodka, and I'm like, "Whitney, they're dead.
They're
They
yeah.
they don't live up to society's rules. Just give them the
Right.
vodka, they're dead."
Yes. So, the different hunts that have taken place here, we've got, of course, the big shows that have come out there. Ghost Hunters went out there in 2008, Ghost Adventures went out there in 2009, Paranormal Lockdown in 2018, Portals to Hell in 2019, and then some smaller names. I found 2 names, but I could only find 1 hunt. The other one required me to download TikTok, and I downloaded TikTok, but then I got distracted and didn't have time to look it up. So one is ghost hunter named Kalani,
Okay.
apparently relatively famous on Twitch and that kind of stuff. And then another one is Mindy on the Move. She went out there in 2019, and I watched her video and pulled some interesting stuff from it. So on top of that, the actual Trans-Allegheny owners have their own ghost hunts and paranormal events. So the have a ghost hunt of the main building. It's 8 hours public. You have to have a reservation for it. It's $100 per person and you bring your own equipment.
Let's go.
Yeah, you're locked down in the building from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. The same time is for medical, forensics, and geriatrics buildings. That's 8 hours public, reservation required, $100 per person, bring your own equipment. And then they also have private hunts, 8 hours, a reservation required, 150 per person with a minimum of 10 people. And this basically means that you've got the entire area to yourself. They pull everybody out.
Like, do I know 10 people?
I know, I thought about it, I was like, well, I don't have 10 people that I could bring.
But between both of us,
We could come up with 10
we could
people.
we could because we count as 2, so we
Yes.
we only need 8 more. So you
I'm
need 4, I
bringing
need 4.
I'm bringing Divya for sure because I want to. That would just be hilarious. And then I'm gonna bring Tori because, of course. And then I don't know if I would bring Laura because I think that she would be like, "Y'all, I'm gonna stay in the car."
It didn't say that they have to participate.
True dat. Ooh, loophole.
Duh.
She could be our what is that?
Home base.
Home base. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think between the two of us we could come up with 10 people. We'd have to bring mom and dad and probably Stacy too.
Well, there you go. So we've got, what, 5 of us? So we just need 5 other people,
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
right? That was math.
And
Yep, 5.
$1,500.
Details. Details.
Yes. So, in the event that you happen to go to a special event like Asylum Ball or Hearstmania, they have
Hearst Mania! I so wanna go now. I don't even know what it is, but I wanna fucking go.
I know, yeah. So apparently those are annual events, so we should figure
Okay,
out when the next one will be and we'll go to that.
cool.
They have flashlight tours that are 30 minutes each, $11 per person, and you can go visit 3 different areas, or there are 3 different types. There's the time and punishment one, where you can go to wards 2, 3, 4, and 6. Discarded Souls, Ward D, Arts and Craft Hallway, and the auxiliary, Women's Auxiliary. Or Chasing Shadows, Wards B, E, R, and S. So,
Okay.
I know the names, the names.
I'm like,
But
is
if
that one that runs, like, every hour? Because like, $33, you could do everything.
oh yeah, yeah,
Like, you
definitely.
know.
They may only offer like during this special event we're doing this tour, that kind of thing. All right, the evidence that is mildly compelling. Of course, the big shows have much more evidence than the little, Mindy's or even the lockdowns that Trans-Allegheny does. So I'm going to start with the Ghost Hunters episode that they went out there with. If you're not familiar with Ghost Hunters, it's the Transatlantic Paranormal Society, and it's Grant and Jason and all of them. They've since restarted. Grant has rejoined the team. It's a whole thing. So this is one of their very, very
It's
first.
drama, honey.
It's
Drama.
drama, honey. I basically went through and watched as many of these as I could because I ended up a little squished for time, but that's okay. So in this one, we see Joe, Kristen, and Chris. And I know if you haven't seen Ghost Hunters, these names mean nothing to you, but that's okay.
We see 3 people.
3 people. They hear people walking on the 4th floor. Remember, the 4th floor is extremely active. Joe thinks that he hears a woman's voice. Jason and Grant, the 2 lead investigators, are in the Civil War section. They see lights or balls of lights that are moving left to right in the hallway, right to left. And right after they see this ball of light, they hear a very loud clanging followed by a voice. And Jason is like, the hell was that? And so he goes down to one of the rooms and kind of peeks inside. And when he peeks inside, he hears that same voice again, but he can't figure out what it's saying.
Mm.
While they're in there, they're talking about what just happened. And both of them hear a child laugh between them. And they are like, nope, time to go. So they tell this to Chris and Kristen, and Chris and Kristen go to the Civil War section and they confirm these things that are happening. Chris
Mm.
thinks that it's a leaky pipe. Kristen is legitimately freaked out about what's going on. Then we have Steve Gonzalez and Dave Tango. They're hanging out in the forensic building. They hear movement and laughter when Steve is explaining that this is an all-female building. Tango goes outside to try to laugh, like maybe there was somebody outside that laughed and it contaminated, but they can't recreate what just happened. They
Okay.
also hear lots of movement and footsteps throughout the episode. And then Jason and Grant, they're in the kitchen a little bit later. They see moving shadows and whispering in the kitchen
Mm.
area. So those are the big evidences that they caught. Ghost Adventures, of course, went out there. This was actually their first live event that they did. So this was a combination of course, Zach, Nick, and Aaron, Debbie, the very late Debbie and Mark Constantino, Chris Fleming, who is a medium, and then Robert Bass, who I actually don't remember. I don't know who Robert Bass is, and I wasn't
Mm,
Googling it. So,
you weren't
all
Googling
right.
it?
Yeah, I wasn't Googling it.
Goo
That's what the kids are saying. They're saying Googin it.
Googling it.
Yes.
Alright.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. So EVPs, they did get a lot of direct answers to questions in their EVPs. Zach, of course, gets an EVP that says, I hate Zach. And then,
Shocking.
shocking. And then they get an EVP that says, Zach and Nick get out. Which I would have been like, yes, goodbye. so,
Goodbye. I like that they
so,
didn't say Aaron. They were like, "No, no, no. We're cool
nah,
with Aaron." Which, I
Aaron,
mean,
chill. He can stay.
totes my goats. Like,
Yeah.
"Aaron, you're the best." Yeah.
Yeah. So they also captured a little girl's disembodied voice, which remember we do have Lily running around.
Mhm.
Zach and Chris see an apparition on the first floor moving to the left 3 times, and that's followed by an orb of light.
Moving to the left 3 times, like, slide to the
Yeah.
right, slide to the left,
So I think that it
crisscross.
was it was 3 separate times that they would see it out of the corner of their eye, a figure going from right to left, and then it would be like a residual where it replays that.
Okay. Okay, I
Yeah.
was like, I mean, if they are doing the Cupid shuffle, like, sweet. Like,
Sweet.
awesome. Sweet. Cha-cha,
So
real
they
smooth.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay. So lots of spirit box responses, of course. Zach, Debbie, and Aaron see a shadow that's running back and forth on the wall of the fourth floor. And then Zach, of course, has something touch him a couple times.
Of course.
And he captures a picture of an orb that's shaped like a skull. I looked for this picture, could not find it.
Is this like the orb that looked like something from that dude, but it actually just looked like a turkey from our ghost
What?
tour thing? Remember the ghost tour? He was like, "Look,
Oh,
look at this
yes.
orb," and I was like, "That looks like a
Yes.
Thanksgiving turkey."
Yeah, I was like, that's a fucking bug.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I looked for the picture and of course Travel Channel. You can't even watch this episode anymore. It's nowhere. I tried to watch
Really?
it. Yeah. Yeah, that and the Ghost Hunters one, I could not. I found the Ghost Hunters one on Daily Motion. So, it's illegal.
Wow.
It's being streamed illegally, but yeah, Ghost Adventures this entire episode has been completely erased. So, what I did get to watch is Paranormal Lockdown and Portals to Hell. They are two of my favorite things because I am in love with Katrina Weidman. Katrina Weidman, marry me. All right. Paranormal Lockdown. This is a series with Nick Groff and Katrina Weidman. They lock themselves in the locations for 72 hours with only them and their cameraman, Rob. So they're in Trans-Allegheny. They're starting their first night, and Nick sees someone, or actually, no, they're in their interviews at this point. They're talking to the owner of the asylum, and he sees somebody standing in the doorway in the women's auxiliary. So he does an on the spot EVP session, and he asks if somebody was standing in the room over there. And Katrina, a little bit after a pause, says, "Do you know you're dead?" And when they replay it, the answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is no. So they get solid,
Oh.
like tone and everything, class A EVPs. But that when it says when they don't know they're dead, that hurts my heart. Like,
Yeah, I just got, like, goosebumps and everything, like, "Aw, I feel
yeah.
bad."
Yeah. So I'm hoping like maybe when she asked that he realized he was dead and maybe he moved on or something, but yeah,
I
that's
feel like if they
terrible.
had asked me that, I'd be like, "Well, now I do." Like, "Fuck."
Damn
Like,
it, you ruined my
damn it.
day.
Be like, "Yep, that was me," and they were like, "Do you know you're dead?" And I'm like, "Well, shit."
God
So,
damn it.
fuck.
I was going to the asylum ball tomorrow.
I was doing the
Hearse
hearse
mania.
hearse mania, I was gonna say hearse parade, but
Hearse parade. So in Ward F, they pull out your very favorite device, the Geobox. And
yeah.
Nick, yeah, it's
I
just
heard
making
it
a bunch of noise.
hauntings. No, you heard noise.
Yeah. While they're setting it up, the geobox says Nick's name, and he's like, "Damn it," because this is Nick's second time being at Trans-Allegheny.
Oh, yeah, because he was with Ghost Adventures.
Yes. So
Yeah.
he's like, "Shit, they remember me." And at one point, Katrina asks, "Is anyone here with us?" And the geobox says, "Come with us." And that's horrific, in my opinion.
I shan't.
I should not.
I willn't.
So they go up to the third floor, or I'm sorry, to the fourth floor after this. As they're walking by some doors, they're being really loud because they're trying to decide what they want to do. And all at once, all three of them hear somebody go, shh. And
Oof.
Rob hears it. Yeah, Rob hears it. And he's like, "Did you hear that?" Nick turns around and he's like, "Yeah, I heard that. What was that?" And he was like, "Katrina, did you just shush us?" And she was like, "No, that wasn't one of you." And so it turns out that they had all just been shushed by some cranky ghost up on the
They're
fourth
like,
floor.
"Look, it was nice and quiet. I was enjoying my time. Now you
Mhm.
bitches came up in here. What the fuck?
Yep.
Quiet it
So
up."
Nick decides to do an EVP session and he sits down. He says, "It's really scary for me walking alone in the darkness. Is it scary for you?" And he gets a yep,
Oh, just like that?
just like that. Yep. I was like,
It
"Oh,
reminds me,
damn."
so here's a segue. One of my favorite Instagram reels right now, it's this little girl and she's got chocolate all over her face, and her
Uh-huh.
mom's like, What happened?" And she's like, "Well, so I was eating ramen and it, like, spilled everywhere." And so the mom goes, "So did you, like, wipe your face with chocolate?" And she goes, "Yup." It's my favorite because the little girl is just so confident. "Yup,
Yep, I sure
I
did.
did."
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Nick decides, "Okay, fine, I'm gonna sleep here." And Dummy puts himself right in the middle of the hallway so his back is not against anything and decides he's gonna try to sleep there. He, at one point, is trying to sit up and he hears something like a loud, unexplained bang behind him.
Mhm.
At one point, Katrina is like, I really like playing games because they think they're, kids or like.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "I really like to play games. I like all kinds of games. I would love it if you played a game with me. What kind of game would you like to play?" And the EVP that they get back is, "Shut up, bitch."
Oh god. She's
Oh,
no,
damn.
no, like, "I don't need you to play any games. I need you to get
Exactly.
out. You guys came in, you were loud, you're fucking with shit, you told me I'm
Mhm.
dead. Get out. You bugging
Yes.
me."
Then they go out to the women's auxiliary, and they are the first people that have been let into the auxiliary, which is kind of cool. They pull out the Geo box and they start asking questions. It comes out as, initially there's a woman's voice that comes through, but they can't understand what it says. And Katrina says, "Do you want to talk to us?" And it says, "Don't say a word," but it's a male's voice. And they're like, it sounds like a male telling the female spirit, "Don't say anything." And
Yeah.
so Katrina says, "You can talk to us. You don't have to listen to him." And the male voice says, "No." And Katrina says, "Why can't she talk to him?" And the male voice says, "I'm telling you." So Katrina says, "You know what? If you can say my name, Katrina, I'll leave you alone and I won't ask her to keep talking." And the ghost box says, "Katrina." So sticking with that, she's like, "No, I didn't fucking say my name." And so she listens to it again. She's like, "Oh shit, they said my name." And so she was like,
Yeah.
"Well, I guess I'm leaving. See you later." So she left. Katrina starts getting chest pains and head pains in the morgue, and she is a little bit sensitive and she thinks that she's picking up on how spirits died. So the head pains,
Yeah.
maybe lobotomy. Yeah.
Yeah. Chest pains.
And she's laying there, she asks somebody, or while she's laying there, she's like, "Can you just like," and she knocks on the side of the drawer. And she was like, "If you're here, can you just," and it's quiet for a minute and then you hear a ting ting and she was like,
"Ah!
"Oh,
Ah! Help!"
I would have been out of there. I would have been
Yeah.
radioing, "Whoever the fuck can hear me, get me out of here."
You would hear
So,
the like Scooby Doo, like, you would my legs would make that sound, yeah.
yes. So in the basement, that's where Nick is sleeping. He hears a lot of footsteps. They end up bringing my two of my favorite investigators in, Amy Bruni and Adam Barry. And so Adam lays down and they give him a digital recorder and they all leave. And so Adam keeps saying, like, hey, is anybody with me? That kind of thing. And then at one point, something like shuffles next to him. They review his recorder whenever he comes to them. He gets an EVP that says, "Hello, Adam." And this is their second time being at Trans-Allegheny because they were there with ghost hunters.
Oh, damn.
Yes. So they were like, not only are these intelligent, but they remember you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps, and I don't necessarily see this next one. Rob, their cameraman, is a little bit more of a skeptic.
Mhm.
He doesn't get shaken very often. So at the very end, he sees something slithering behind Katrina and he captures it on video. It's this dark mass that slithers and it blocks out light and that kind of thing. And they're like, what the fuck is that? But it bothered him enough that he was shaking, and he just doesn't do that, is my understanding.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So Portals to Hell is one of my other favorite shows. This is Jack Osborne and Katrina Weidman. They and nope, that's Amy and Adam. They like to bring in psychics and do a psychic sweep, and then they go through and do their investigation afterwards. So while they're there, they bring in a psychic named Michelle Bellinger, and she is incredibly gifted. She can At one point, the owner is telling them about a woman that committed suicide. She was able to pinpoint the room where it happened.
Wow.
She picked up on Dean and his murderers. She said that he was a nonverbal, intelligent haunt, and he typically lays down on the floor prone, and he's always looking up at whoever's in front of him. He's more of a childlike entity, but he can be aggressive whenever he wants to be.
That
And
actually
then,
really freaks me out, that description.
yeah, laying on the
Like,
floor looking up at you.
yeah, that's
Yeah. It's not okay. He's known to crawl along the floor.
so I didn't need to know any of that. Just knowing that he existed was fine, but for some reason, the crawling and the prone, like, I don't I'm
I
good.
get you. I get you.
Mhm.
So when they get up to the fourth floor, she picks up on a very intelligent and imposing force. And one of the things that she says is she picks up that the spirits are purposefully scaring people because that's what people are expecting. Basically, the spirits are like,
Oh,
"Oh, you coming in here and you want to be scared? Here you go, bitch." And that's what made me think of when you were like, "Yeah," I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm a demon,"
I'm
you know.
I'm a demon.
Yeah, basically, she was like, "They're scaring people on purpose." Because that's what people are expecting when they come in here.
Huh.
And that follows true with what I've said. The energy you bring into an investigation is the energy you get out of an investigation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you go in there, you're like, "Ooh, it's gonna be spooky."
mhm, yes.
Mhm.
So, Katrina, when they start their investigation, she's hearing voices down the hall and they're audible, disembodied voices. At the exact same time, all the devices stop working. Her phone becomes corrupt, the Geo box won't turn on, and the SLS cam just keeps rebooting itself.
Huh.
That's a weird instance.
That's interesting.
Perhaps one of my favorite interactions was when the REM pod starts going off in Dean's room. They put some toys down and they put the REM pod next to it. And they're sitting in silence, and then all of a sudden the REM pod starts to go off like he's coming towards the toys. I
Um,
know you're thinking
I
of him
just
crawling.
yes, and it's not okay. I don't why'd you
So
have to tell me that part? Oh.
I'm sorry. So this part might lighten it up a little bit. He does intelligent responses to the question. She says, "Light it up green if yes, and do nothing if it's no." So Katrina asks, "Did you die in this room?" And it lights up green for yes. Jack says, "Are you still scared?" Nothing happens. "Did you know the people that killed you?" Yes. "Do you get to move through the whole building?" Yes. "It's a fun toy, isn't it?" Talking about the REM pod. Yes. "Do you like us being here, having someone to talk to and play with?" Yes. "Dean, is that you affecting our REM pod?" Yes. "I'm going to try something, okay?" Yes. At this point, they bring forward a mask that was created by one of his killers in the arts and crafts swing. The person had just recently died. So they set the mask down next to the toys in the REM pod and they say, "Do you know who this is?" And they get nothing. "Did we scare you? Can you come back?" Nothing. "If we take this away, will you come back?" Nothing. She then picks it up and says, "Okay, I think this is scaring you. I'm going to put it away now." And then she puts it away. She comes and sits back down and she says, "We put that away so he can't hurt you, okay?" Yes. If they get enough, they start talking about, see, this is a compelling thing. And, maybe they just want to be seen. They just want to be heard. And Jack says if they get enough acknowledgement, they may be able to fulfill their mission and move on. And the REM pod says yes. And
Oh.
then, yes. And then Katrina, as they're leaving, they have the laser grid shining down the hallway towards Dean's room. And she turns around and she says, "Dean, I would love it if you could come out and show yourself to us. Could you just go back and forth in the
Oh,
thing?" And as
no.
she's saying this, the REM pod starts lighting up yes. Right after that, there was an unexplained noise that occurred, and it turns out the unexplained noise was a door closing on its own.
Huh. But they didn't get
So,
anything slithering on the floor.
no, no, they didn't get
Okay.
anything. No.
Alright.
So, next is Mindy on the move. It's her husband, and her cousin that are out there, and she uses her phone. It's like an ITC app on her phone. So I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this. There's a lot it could just be a random word generator.
Right.
But she is in one of the rooms and it pops up as name. The word comes through as name. And she says, "My name is Mindy. What's yours?" And it comes up as Debbie. She then gets the following set of words, one right after another: cold baby, maggots, worm, marker, find her.
Ah!
Yes. And Mindy was like, "What the fuck who am I finding?" Like, yeah. So she was like, clearly this woman, her baby is buried somewhere, and she's telling me to find her, but I can't get like baby's name, or because she was trying for a significant period of time to get information about this and it just stopped.
I mean, it would not surprise me at all if the little nine-year-old girl, if she was not the only child that was
Oh
born in
yeah.
the facility. I mean,
Oh yeah.
surely with that many, like, men and women, especially if they are mentally ill or just criminals,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
There it is documented that many children were born in the asylum and many of them just lived in the asylum for their entire lives.
yeah.
Yeah. She also at one point gets a child laughing or screaming. I couldn't really tell. I could hear it, but I couldn't really tell which one it was. And she asked, "Are you young?" And the phrase that came back, every single word, one right after another, was, "You are not." And she was like, "No, I'm not young. I'm 29." So that was the
Honey,
interesting.
that's young,
That's
okay?
young. Coming from
Just
36, that's young.
keep up with your 29-year-old, alright?
And then finally, the Trans-Allegheny organized ghost hunts. So I picked out, there are a bunch of stories in that book that I was talking about, but I picked out the ones that were from actual, like, the paranormal investigators. So one of the groups is the Spirit Rising Paranormal. They got an EVP when they were discussing the size of the room of the nurses' quarters. They got an EVP that said it's small, and the
So
nurses' quarters
small.
were tiny. It's itty bitty tiny small.
It's teeny weeny, not so
Yes.
small.
So a couple of the investigators were talking during the another EVP session. They were just kind of talking about what to do next, and they heard and got a recording of, they heard it in real time and got the recording of something talking. And the guy that was with this girl, he was like, "You're talking." And she was like, "It wasn't me." He was like, "I swear I heard you say something." When they listened back to it, it was a male's voice saying, "Get out now."
Ah!
Yeah, I'd be like, "Okay, thank you, goodbye." So at one point they were fixing their camera straps and that kind of stuff. They got an EVP saying, "Is that George?
Hello? Statue?
George? Is it
George?
George?"
Curious
So
George.
they
No, this
also
is
got
Patrick.
this is Patrick. Is mayonnaise an instrument? So they also got an EVP of a old man wheezing like he was having trouble breathing.
Oh, I was like he was laughing like you or
Shut up. I say as I promptly wheeze. So then there's the Hubbard Paranormal Society. They saw shadows in the kitchen. They heard lots of disembodied voices. They saw full bodied apparitions. The Talkington Paranormal, there was a man in, I believe, the women's auxiliary area that
Okay.
he had a woman singing Frere Jacques in his ear.
What, in his ear?
In his ear, like he was the only one that could hear it and it was in his ear.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, it would be one thing if it was just, like, singing Frere
Mhm.
Jacques, but the fact that it's only in his ear, that's like at LaSalle, like, I swear that
You
was
heard
in
somebody,
my
yeah.
in my ear,
Mhm.
but all we got was like a, "Oh." So, like,
Yeah.
I that's just, oh, that's so weird. Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
And then in that same room, he got an EVP of a woman speaking French.
Ah.
Yeah. MD Paranormal, they were on the 4th floor when they saw the creeper.
I was like, "What the fuck is the creepo?" I don't.
My my brain combined creeper and shadow, and it came out creepo.
The creepo.
The creepo. The creeper shadow figure crawled out of a door on the right, down the hall towards them, and then went into a door on the left side of the hallway.
I just need you to know I'm pulling my feet closer into my blanket right now. Like, I like, "Ah."
She doesn't like the crawling.
I don't like the crawling.
They go down to investigate this. It turns out that the door the thing went into was blocked by another door laying on its side, meaning that you couldn't get into that room. In addition,
Good. I'm not following that shit. Fuck that.
the space that was there was not big enough for an animal or a person to get through, and the room inside was empty. The last one was a woman from a group called the Haunted Housewives. This is a group of sensitive women from Ohio. And I was like, "It's fancy. I
I
want to be a
want to
haunted
know
housewife."
them. We should become friends. Let's find
Yes.
them.
So she saw a tall, thin shadow figure slide across the wall at super speed in Ward 2, and it was about 9 feet tall. And then in addition, the women she was with, she started feeling something tickling on her and she was moving her shoulders and stuff to kind of like on the back of her neck. And they noticed and they were like, "Are you okay?" And she was like, "No, there's something on me, like a bug or something." And so they went and looked and they were like, "No, there's nothing on you." And she was like, "Are you sure it didn't go down my shirt or something?" And so they're looking. And as they're looking, she's like, "Oh, now it's burning." She had 3 scratch marks down the back of her neck.
Ah,
Yes.
no.
Yes. And on that very creepy note, that is my rundown of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
It was a lot,
It
yeah,
was.
but it was fascinating, like, the entire time I was looking through this, I was just like, "Holy shit, this place is crazy." Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I would have to have, like I'd have to have 10 people in that private tour, and then I would have to have, like, one person for comic relief. Can I bring a comedian with me to be like, I want Shane Madej to come with me.
You're gonna
That's
have
who I
it, like,
want.
it's gonna be, like, your people, and then you're gonna have, like, your therapist there, and be like, "Just so you know what's happening to me, so we can talk about this later." Like,
Yeah,
or just, like, in the middle if you're like, I'm having a breakdown, I need my therapist. Please help,
right.
therapist."
My therapist would be like, "Nah, bitch, you did this to yourself."
But yeah, like, we should reach out and be like, "Hey, Shane and Ryan, you guys should go out with us. We're gonna get the haunted housewives to go with us,
Mhm.
and I'm always gonna reach out to the girls at Morbid because I think they would have
Uh-huh.
fun. So,
And
let's,
Aaron
like, get a big
fucking
group."
Goodwin.
And Aaron
Yes.
Goodwin, yeah,
And
yeah.
Katrina Weidman, because marry me, Katrina Weidman.
Okay, I'm gonna have to separate you 2. Yep.
But yes, it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed researching it. So,
Yeah, it
yeah.
sounds like it was crazy.
Yes. So if
Cool.
you've ever gone to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum and you have some creepy ass stories, I would love to hear them. So send those in,
100%.
yes, to the ghostsisterstx@gmail.com. And feel free to hit us up at our Instagram or Reddit or whatever, all the things we have at the Ghost Sisters TX or the Ghost Sisters.
And we will spook you bitches later.
Spook you later, bitches. Bye.
Bye.